Hey everybody, it is Nathan Selove, and as promised, I have now finished the first season of Good Doctor, and I'm going to make a video review about it. And here, joining me in this discussion, is my lovely wife, Jess Selove, and we're going to give a review of the show from basically an autistic perspective. So, Jess, Season 1, specifically, we finished Season 1. So, first, let's talk about the positives, alright? What are some positives that you think?
Okay, well, I do like how they are very careful with the aseptic scenes and the sterile environments.
Nursing student, by the way.
But man, oh man, do they always have to have some dramatic reveal for something that's not that groundbreaking?
Yeah.
I read a study about this. You're a state-of-the-art hospital and you're not already doing this practice? I'm a little concerned.
Yeah, she's here to give the medical expertise.
I'm not a medical expert. We are cutting that out.
No, we are not. So, anyways, let's talk about the positives with regard to the autism portrayal to begin with. First off, one of the things that I really like about it is the fact that it tries to give a social model approach. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I definitely I also especially like the beginning episode because there is kind of an almost like a world building where they're trying really hard to talk about autism without expositing you to death with it. Yeah. So there is
I like how it didn't feel like they were just reading off a Wikipedia page of aspects of autism. I like how they portray him as a specific as a unique, specific type of autistic, which, I mean, I've often said on this channel, you met one autistic. So it definitely does portray an autistic experience, obviously not the autistic experience. But I think that they try to approach it with a social model because they often talk about how when he does encounter struggles of people like discriminating against him, they talk about it as an ableist thing rather than a infringing on his limitations.
There are definitely things that are positive about this show, and one of them is that throughout this show so far, they have had instances where someone might be discriminating against him in ways that just would never be acceptable to a person. So there are issues where sometimes people don't want him to work on their families because he's autistic, or there are surgeons in the hospital because he's a surgical resident who don't want him to do anything in surgeries. Yeah. And there are people who challenge that.
And I also kind of like how they do a critique of the idea of him kind of being under the microscope of the administration. So basically, like, he does a bunch of really crazy, amazing things that no one else could have done, but he makes one mistake and suddenly his career's on the line. Like, a mistake that... Because there are several other characters in the show that make mistakes that result in someone, in one of their patients dying, but they're never under the microscope. They're never like, oh, you're going to get fired because you made this mistake. But for him, when he makes a mistake... suddenly everything he's done is not as important, and I think that's a good critique to make.
I do think they do a fair job of talking about some of the challenges that the character Sean faces that are really particular to autistics and only certain autistics, but one of his things is he's late a lot because he doesn't drive and he relies on the bus. And, it's absolutely unacceptable to show up late, especially for something where you need to be briefed on the medical background of patients. You can't be late for that. And so it's right for them to say it's not okay for you to show up late. But his point is he gets stuck and says, no, I wasn't late. The bus was late. I was on time. And I think there are times where we'll be watching it and thinking, oh, if only they would kind of explain it to him from this perspective of, you may not have been late, but the bus was late. Therefore, you need to do something to make sure that you are never, that the bus can't be too late for you.
And to sort of transition into the negatives, one criticism that I thought was going to be a negative, but when I thought more about it, I was like, oh, I can actually relate to that, is that they kind of portray the character as like a Vulcan, basically, like speaks very emotionless a lot of the time, and
for those of you who don't know, Vulcans are from Star Trek, Dr.
If you've
Spock.
if you've never seen Star Trek, then get off my channel right now and go watch it. For the rest of you, anyways, I was thinking
fine.
like you're basically portraying this guy as a Vulcan, but then I kind of thought back, and I realized that Vulcans were always the characters that I related to the most. So, you know,
Well, there's also...
they're metaphor for autistics, basically.
Well, yeah, that's in a lot of culture. Your dad says something that I think is funny where he'll say, you know, superpowers are always a metaphor for autism.
So let's talk about some of our criticisms of it.
You go first.
One of my major criticisms is that there were several points where they kind of hinted at a rejection of curism, but didn't outright say it. And I really wish that they had done a more outright rejection of curism. There's one part where there was this guy in a wheelchair who was getting he was basically getting a surgery so that he could walk again, and you know he was like and Sean Murphy, the main character, was talking about how basically him being in a wheelchair is part of what shaped his personality. And then the guy in the wheelchair is like, well, yeah, but you'd jump at a cure for autism, wouldn't you? And like, he doesn't say yes, but he doesn't say no. He kind of makes a point of, but this is part of the reason why I am who I am. And he does say there is no cure for autism, but I would have liked a more flat out rejection of curism.
I kind of disagree, just because I think that they were trying to show that the character's still developing in that way, because I think that's part of a character arc. He doesn't outright say, oh, there's no need for me to have a cure, but he does say, he does actually question the person in the wheelchair and says, you know, would you be the same person? Yeah. So I do think that it's kind of hinting at that.
Yeah. And another thing I would say is, I think the actor does a great job. You know, I do. I probably would have preferred him being autistic. I probably would have preferred them choosing autistic, just because I want that social model perspective. And in the same realm as that, if he's not an autistic, I would have preferred them actually bring in consultants who were actually on the spectrum in order to help inform the character, rather than like experts in the field of psychology. We did some research.
You mean, like, in addition to
experts. We did some research and we tried to find whether or not they actually had actual autistics like on-set consulting. We didn't find any. Leave a comment down below if we're wrong, but we couldn't find that, and I think that's a problem.
So I would say one of my critiques is more, I do really appreciate how they showed a full experience. You know, his only experiences in life are not strictly related to autism. Some of them are related to, you know, he had abusive father. Some of them are related to growing up in poverty because he lived in poverty when he was a child. Yeah. So I do really appreciate that. On the other hand, sometimes I felt like the show wasn't great at marking, not necessarily distinction, but sort of grounding it out how, yes, him being on the spectrum probably changes the way he processes trauma, but they also sometimes, I felt like, showed it interchangeably. Yeah. So they showed a lot of, you know, flashbacks, which can be very frustrating to us because we're watching this thinking, you're in the middle of a surgery, you don't have 5 minutes for a flashback. Yeah. But
no time for a flashback right now, bro. And my last criticism would be one of the annoying things about how autism is portrayed in media is that it is often portrayed as, oh, this is the autistic experience. When we have there's a very diverse experience within the autistic community. They did have one other autistic character come in briefly, but I want more of that. I want more autistic characters that kind of demonstrate just how diverse the experience can be. You know, maybe some autistics that are nonverbal, maybe have some autistics that are a little bit better at communicating with neurotypicals than Sean is. Yeah. You know, so all in all, my main verdict on the show is I enjoy it. I think that overall it is positive, in my personal opinion. I think overall it's positive.
It's got some really great writing.
It's got some really great writing, and I think that the core message is important. But I think that there are a lot of ways that it can be improved, and there are a lot of ways that it should be improved. Like I said, my solutions are have primarily inform the characters and the writing by actual autistics. In fact, bring in some autistic writers to come in and write some of the episodes. Bring in some autistic directors to come in and direct. Bring some.
Bring all the autistics.
Just bring all the autistics.
You get
an autistic, and you get yeah.
Check under your seats.
It's an autistic.
I will say we've only seen season 1.
We've only seen season 1, so it's possible they're working, and I hope they do continue to improve, and also like I said, bring in introduce more autistic characters.
I will also say one thing that I really like about the show that I think you probably do as well is that it is not as if every episode is, it's a very special episode with Sean, and I do think sometimes people unintentionally, when they talk about anyone disabled, they say, this person is just an angel walking Earth or on Earth, and they are amazing and incredible. And it's true, you can say, I really like this, I like a lot about who they are, but sometimes it almost becomes infantilizing and what they call
and they don't really
inspiration
do that as much.
Entertainment.
Yeah, and they don't really do that as much, which I like. Well, thanks everyone for watching. That's today's video.
It was?
Yes, it was.
What?
Yeah.
This is a video?
Yeah. And if you liked this video, give it a like, a share, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, check out some of my other stuff, and we will see you next week.
I won't.
She might not, but I will. I'll definitely see you next week.
He won't see you. He can't see you.